First, I've just been asked, who am I? Imagine, by the most important individual in this room. So I'm feeling rather conscious of myself. So maybe I ought to start off by extending my sincere apologies to His Excellency for have not gone to the office to essentially present what one would say credentials. But I figured today marks an important occasion for me to be able to do that, not only to him, but of course to everybody that is here, especially those that are from Botswana. My name is Tsepo Hepima Panyane, and since 3 weeks ago, I'm a Chevening scholar with Cardiff University. So I'm really excited to be in the United Kingdom. So I'm quite green, like some people would say. So I'm hoping that whatever it is that I need to know, I will leave this room knowing. It's a special occasion in that I love conversations, and hence I've been told I tend to talk a lot. So the first event that I get to attend in the, in the United Kingdom has a lot to do with talking. So go figure. But in any case, His Excellency, Reverend Dr. John Sarhosing and Mem Sarhosing, her honor, or should I say her honorable Boholo Window, whom today I would like to acknowledge as a fellow Chevening alumni. I think it is important for me to highlight that. I would also like to acknowledge our host, that is, of course, the BITC CEO, for allowing us to gather here today. And of course, this is Re Kilusitse. I need to be very calm about saying these names today. For the first time in my life, my heart is actually quite beating. Kilusitse Reulibile. Thank you very much. I also like to perhaps acknowledge a gentleman that has brought us here. A few days ago, literally, don't count weeks, but a few days ago, Botswana celebrated its 53rd independence. And I believe some of you had the opportunity of gathering somewhere. I was not invited, but I was in the UK. Some people gathered, and of course, there was a lot of dance, there was song, and there was more conversation. In a few days, one of the days that every single Motswana has in mind is the fact that they will have the opportunity of casting their vote. October 23rd, it's an extremely important day. So today, as we continue to converse about a country that we all love and that one gentleman has decided to adopt and essentially share the love of this country with the rest of the world, he happens to be, of course, our guest speaker, or should I say, our guest today. I'm sure that's one of the reasons why you came, right? Right? Okay. Allow me to say Alexander McCall Smith. I also would like to perhaps acknowledge a gentleman that I don't see in this room, but will definitely get a chance to see him. He is a celebrated chef from Botswana, but he's been based in Poland for the last, I don't know how many years now, with no intentions of moving back home. I say that because he's not in the room. This is Ray Joseph Seleto. I would also like to obviously acknowledge the management and staff of BITC, and of course the board members. And of course, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, any dignitaries that are here, do pardon me if I were to acknowledge you by name. Everybody, I'm sure, is very important here. I also would like to acknowledge my colleagues and, of course, friends in the media fraternity, as I'm studying an MA in journalism, media, and communication. Make sure that we do trend this particular event and many others that will be held, I'm sure, in various places with regards to telling the Botswana story. Ladies and gentlemen, you are more than welcome. Mine is not to welcome you, but rather to ensure that we all have a really good time. Yay! I was hoping my partner there. Yay! So that's all I'm going to be doing this afternoon, making sure that everybody has a really good time. But to welcome you, though, I would like at this point to ask you for your indulgence as we welcome on the podium His Excellency.
the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, Honorable Boholo Joy Kaniwendo, the Chief Executive Officer of Botswana Investment and Trade Center, Re Ulibile, the guest of honor, Re Alexander McCall Smith, board members and CEOs from business communities around in here, the media houses, authors, and book reviewers that we have here today, my fellow Botswana, who I'm very delighted to have in this gathering today, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my singular honor and privilege to welcome you to this event to celebrate the branding of Botswana in partnership with Mr. Alexander McCall Smith, who has been the friend of our country for many, many years. I wish to thank our distinguished guests for taking their time to be with us this afternoon. I believe that today's event will contribute to the ongoing efforts of branding and marketing our country in the UK. I also wish to express our gratitude to Mr. Alexander McCall Smith, often referred to, sir, with all due respect, as Sandy, by his close friends. I'm calling him Sandy because I'm one of those, the good friends, for agreeing to partner with us this afternoon and share this incredible story and his love for Botswana with the international community. We therefore look forward with excitement to an afternoon full of adventure and thrill as Mr. Smith takes us down this memory lane through his remarkable works and his love for our beautiful country, Botswana. To our guests and the media, thank you very much for being here today. And I believe that you will continue to share positive stories about our country, thus contributing to our efforts aimed at the promotion of our country in the global arena. Director of Ceremonies, at this juncture, allow me to introduce the Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry of the Republic of Botswana, the Honorable Boholo Joy Kaniwendo, whom we are greatly privileged to have in our midst today. Honorable Kaniwendo became Botswana's youngest female specially elected Member of Parliament in October 2016. She was in April 2018 appointed a cabinet minister with the portfolio responsibility for trade, investment and industry. Honorable Kaniwendo is a seasoned economist with a very strong background in the Botswana and Southern Africa regional economy, specializing on the state budget, debt management, fiscal sustainability, competitiveness and ease of doing business, regulatory review. And if you might like to know, she attained her highest academic degrees in this country. Director of Ceremonies, I now have the honor to invite the Minister to deliver her keynote. The Minister.
Thank you very much, High Commissioner, Director of Ceremonies, Ladies and gentlemen, friends of Botswana, Botswana here present, and of course our guest of honor, Mr. Alexander McCall Smith. Can I too call you Sandy? Of course, as we greet His Excellency the High Commissioner, we also recognize the lady in charge, Masa Hosing, and friends, members of the media here present. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon. Pula! Rabata pula ko Botswana, lara aine, pula! Not in the UK though. We want it all the way in Botswana. We are experiencing some really harsh droughts. So please keep wishing good rains upon the land that is Botswana. I am quite excited to be with you here this afternoon as I join you on the session in conversation with Mr. Alexander McCall Smith. I must say, even though as a minister, I never even imagined we'd have this moment, Sandy. I'm going to milk it, eh? The Botswana story is a very special one, and in this past couple of months, in this last year, we've had the greatest pleasure of sharing it with the rest of the world, with His Excellency the President, Masisi. And we have gotten to a place where we too want to own our story and we want to share it because we think it's so precious. And it shouldn't just be in the books, but it should be heard even quite loud and proudly, particularly by the leaders in Botswana. And we wish to recognize your work, Mr. McCall Smith, and recognize the work that your series have also done in profiling Botswana. The #1 ladies detective agency, which primarily depicts the culture, lifestyle, and lifestyles of us Botswana. And I also particularly like it as a woman because it shows a strong black woman from Botswana. Through your efforts, Sandy, millions of readers globally have Botswana tucked into their hearts and their minds, and also providing a bridge for the knowledge gap that exists about Botswana. And despite the many key desirable attributes that sets Botswana apart from her regional peers, the country remains, or it really used to remain, quite relatively unknown. It is greatly, and this has greatly affected our ability to compete on an equal footing for the much sought after investors and tourism. But I can say that we have seen in the last decade an increase in our tourism and investment by several folds, at the very least 3 folds. And I also, at this moment, would like to encourage that our institutions and those that work in marketing Botswana to take advantage of your generosity, because you have shown that by being with us here today, and ensure that we continue to increase the profile of Botswana and to raise the bar in terms of profiling us as a tourist and investment destination. It is extremely gratifying to learn that Mr. McCall Smith became a household name after the publication of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency series. And he just said to me that this is probably one of his best works, right? Yes, and I think it's because of Botswana. See, it's the best, so... The most popularly known as well, and it has now sold well over 20 million copies in the English language alone. And the story of Precious Ramotswe is both a delight as well as a very authentic reflection of Botswana. And as stated in the review by the Newsweek, it says that Mma Ramotswe McCall Smith minted one of the most memorable heroines in any modern fiction. And the reviews such as these are not only heartwarming, but are also real catalysts to excite people to consider taking a journey to Botswana and to appreciate the real life of the Botswana. I also want to say that in addition to just writing the book, we have also seen an increase in tourists that are particularly interested in what appears to be a book club that is held in the middle of the Delta. And I encourage you all to partake in that book club in the Delta, bearing in mind that it's a minimum of $5,000 a night. And if you want to go and you need a +1, and I will help you with your bags. All right, Director of Ceremonies, allow me to share a bit of a synopsis on Botswana as I come to a close. Many great things have been said about my beautiful country, Botswana, and it boasts a mature and peaceful, longest-serving democracy in the continent of Africa, an excellent track record for good governance, and as we will soon find out in just about 12 days, that we do have smooth transitions of power and smooth elections as well. And I am hoping, as someone who is in power, that there will be no transition. But instead, there will be peaceful elections, and we will all accept the results that will come out of it. Because this has been our tradition, and we expect nothing to change. And the living conditions in Botswana are quite comparable, and it is one of the leading economies in Africa, and we are proud to say that we are among the top 4 and top 5 in competitiveness. And when it comes to investment, we do have a quite wide array of incentives that we offer, including tax cuts or concessions of about 17% and others to 7%. And they're ranging from about 5% in our special economic zones to about 15% for manufacturing industries that are not within the special economic zones. I believe that most of what I have been told to share with you by the CEO, who clearly is the boss in this particular moment, he will say it himself. And this is to share with you the sovereign credit ratings, and also to share with you that our GDP per capita ranges at about $7.5 US to $8,000 US. But what I think is most important to say about Botswana is that it is peaceful, and it will serve quite well as a hub for your investments. We guarantee protection of investments, but most proudly, we guarantee peace and safety for those that live within our borders. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish you all a very good afternoon. I am starving, so Joe, if you're listening, where is he? The chef? He's in, okay, all right. So tell him I did not eat this morning, and I did not have my lunch, because ladies and gentlemen, we are to be blessed by the amazing hands of Joseph Seleto, who is our chef based in Poland. So please do take a bite, take a sip of that Red Bush Rooibos tea. I see others have been having champagne. But we look forward to engaging with you this afternoon, and I thank you very much for your kind attention. Pula.
I had hoped that the young lady that I met earlier on by the name of Lami, now you can imagine my excitement at meeting someone who is quite white when you look on the outside, but very Motswana. Ko rona mpuela Setswana. A mpontsha gore ene o tswa ko Botswana. And for literally a split second, you would have thought that I was from here, she is from Botswana. And that's the beauty of Botswana. When you fall in love, you completely immerse yourself in the beauty of Botswana. I just wanted to acknowledge her, but I think she's got class. I managed to get out of my lecture today for the simple reason that I did share the invitation. And one of my lecturers, who happens to, well, her class is today, said to me, "Oh my goodness, I love him." And I thought, this is interesting. The lady is quite accomplished in that she's written quite a number of books that are actually being used in journalism schools across the world. And for her to show that kind of excitement over the books that are written about Botswana was really heartwarming. So thank you very much. At this point, ladies and gentlemen, we will get on to, I'm sure, the exciting part of today's event. But I also just wanted to say, before we do that though, it might be worthwhile, at least for those that maybe haven't been to Botswana in a while. Because I'm sure if you've been there once, I can assure you, you're going to be going there numerous times. So at this point, I would like to invite all of you to perhaps take a look at our screens while we indulge we are and where we are from.
As the day begins to break, a star begins to rise. It is a remarkable story of a precious gem that rose from the rough to shine as a beacon of hope and prosperity. It is the story of a nation nested at the heart of Southern Africa. It is a story of an oasis where possibility meets opportunity. A country that evokes a sense of pride, where brave leaders championed the spirit of blue, black, and white. It is a story of its unique culture, its people, also diverse, yet also united and proud. It is the story of Botswana. Botswana, a country like no other, a nation of eternal sunshine, where the welcoming smile of her people will brighten your day. It is a rich melting pot of unique cultures and traditions. The lure of the distinct clap sounds of our traditional dance, renowned the world over. It is the sound of Botswana. You have arrived. We could tell you that Botswana is the best place on earth to visit, that we have the greatest tourism offer, and the rarest iconic African landscapes of a delta in a desert. We may also tell you that we're the vanguard in the management and conservation of our pristine wildlife, ensuring that it remains undisturbed in its natural wonder. But we'll just tell you to come and create your own memories. Not only do we pride ourselves with our natural beauty, our doors to the world are also open, and we invite you to come and discover the business destination that is Botswana. As part of the global community, we continue to invest in modernizing our infrastructure, keeping us at par with the rest of the world. Botswana makes it easy for companies to participate in our growing economy and enjoy favorable business incentives. We compete on favorable terms with the rest of the world. Botswana offers an enabling business environment with an abundance of highly skilled and a trainable workforce. Our unique blend of the modern and untamed means you can attend a cultural event in the park and taste our fashion and music all in a day. So when you plan your next trip to Botswana, prepare to be mesmerized by our unique culture, heritage, and the endless possibilities of leisure and lifestyle activities. Because everyone falls in love with Botswana. You will too. Come to Botswana. Our pride, your destination.
We can do better than that. Thank you very much. I was asking somebody if they'd been to the Delta, and they said to me, that's all they could say to me. I'm sure that explains exactly how they felt. Now, I was being asked how come I got to stand at the podium because and I've since been told that ke kofejane, which means I'm the last born, so I'm pretty much allowed to be here. But I must maybe share that in 2016, as His Excellency made mention of when Honorable Boholo Kenowendo got onto cabinet, I had the opportunity, in actual fact, to have a conversation with her. And there's a column that I was writing called Voice Woman, which I featured her. This is something that I noticed a few days ago. I featured her in the column in 2016 in November. The October, which would be this month, I had featured and had a conversation with Joseph Seletu. So I featured Joseph Seletu in October, and I got the opportunity of featuring Honorable Boholo in November. It doesn't stop there. I'm just saying, for His Excellency, just so that at least we're clear and you don't go back to BITC and say, why this young lady over my beloveds? I had the opportunity many, many years ago to not only engage with Mma Ramotswe through the books, but I had the pleasure of actually sharing a trailer with Jill Scott. At the time, we had been told when we had been casted into the movie that these are huge stars. You don't talk to them. They get in the zone. You must give them a moment. I took it to heart, literally. I didn't engage. I was polite. I said hello, and I got on with everything. During the rap party, I got to find out. Jill Scott walked over to me and said, you know, I've been wondering who you are. I said, what do you mean? She said, because Jill Scott was under the impression that I was one of the actresses that had been flown in because there were so many people that were participating. For the simple reason that I had read the brief that said, do not disturb. You don't tell somebody from Botswana not to disturb and expect them to disturb. We will take it literally that we shouldn't disturb. It's something that we pride ourselves in, but I do realize that it then robbed me of a chance of having great girl conversation in the trailer because I was being mindful of not overstepping. But in any case, I did have a wonderful opportunity being casted in the movie. It was a really small part, but like I've since learned, it was a talking part, so it was not just a part, and I did have a trailer. So that is the reason why perhaps I felt the need to say, can I please be a part of this event? So thank you very much. At this point, I would like to invite to the stage the lady that will obviously get the conversation going, and I'm pretty sure she will ask all the questions that we've had. I don't know how she's going to do it because probably some of you might have some burning questions that you might want to ask, but I'm sure she would have done a thorough job in ensuring that she captures a lot of those questions. With that being said, I would like to invite Bame Moremo, who will be joined on stage by our guest, who is going to perhaps share why Botswana. Not that we mind, but we're curious. Why Botswana? And that's how the conversation is going to go. We will also thereafter obviously get to meet the chef that we've been talking about pretty much while we get ready to nibble on some food.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As I've just been introduced, Gibidwa Bame Moromong, I'm with the Botswana Investment and Trade Center. I wanted to preface this conversation by saying thank you. Thank you, Mr. Alexander McCall Smith, to you and your team. It's been over a year of conversations with Leslie and Jan and Anna, and they've been extremely gracious. I know that you've got an extremely busy schedule, so thank you for doing this.
Delighted.
I also wanted to say I'm a huge fan.
Thank you.
As I was telling you outside, I started reading the books in 2003.
Yes.
The book says that Mma Ramotswe, Precious Ramotswe, is of traditional build. When I read that, I was like, that's my role right there. So when they didn't cast me, I was extremely upset.
Oh, dear.
So I guess this is my way of getting back at them for not casting me.
Well.
What was the inspiration for Precious Ramotswe? Is there a woman you met in Botswana who sort of modeled what has now become this larger-than-life woman?
There isn't. I wish I could take people to one particular person and say, this is the model of Mma Ramotswe. I wish I could.
We all want that.
I know, I wish I could. But I can't really. What I can say is that there was one moment when I had some inspiration. And that was when I was visiting from Swaziland, and I was staying with my friends, the Moffats, in Machudi. And it was coming up to Independence Day celebrations, and annual Independence Day. And there was a lady in the village who wanted to give them a chicken for Independence Day lunch. And so I went down with my hostess to this lady's house, and I can see this. She had a very, very well-kept yard. It was beautifully swept, and a good, respectable house. You know, she obviously was a very good housewife who was keeping it very nicely. And there was a chicken walking around the yard, unaware of what lay ahead. And this lady, who was quite traditionally built, she chased this chicken, and the chicken went off. There was a lot of dust and feathers, and the odds were against the chicken. And she caught the chicken, then dispatched it and gave it to us. And I thought, wow, that's a very impressive woman. But I can see her. She was wearing a red dress, and as I say, she was traditionally built. And I thought one day, I thought, what is her story? Yeah. Because that's something as a writer, I feel that all the time. When I meet people, my first thought is, what's this person's story? And you have to do that as a novelist. You have to have that interest and curiosity in people. You've got to listen to other people's conversation. Not too obviously, but you do want to hear what is being said.
Eavesdrop a lot.
Eavesdrop a lot. But so that lady was she put the idea in my mind that I'd write about a woman in Botswana. She's not Mma Ramotswe. I wish she were. There was a model for for Ma Potokwane, who runs the orphan home.
Orphanage, yes.
And I used to go out to the SOS children's home out at Tlokwane. And I used to go out quite regularly because I knew one of the people who ran it there with her. I haven't seen him for a long time, but he was a great man. He was a very inspirational figure. He was wonderful with the kids. I mean, he really was. And the matron was a magnificent woman called Betty, and she would do anything for the children. There were these little children who'd had bad luck in their lives, bad start, being given this wonderful loving care and the thing. And so Mma Potokwane is inspired by Betty. And I did see her later on after the publication of books, after she'd retired. I went down to see her, and I think she was working at that stage down at Camp Hill. Okay. And I went to see her and said, you know, you inspired me to create this character.
That's beautiful.
So that happens in books.
I wanted to read a quote from the New Statesman, which reads, "The beauty of the land, the people, the colors and smells leap off the page with such warm-hearted liveliness that you find yourself laughing and crying, instead of, as so often, hardening your heart against the seeming hopelessness of an entire continent." How did you immerse yourself so deeply into Botswana's culture? Because you talk in a very rich and layered manner about who we are. You talk about Boto being a concept of I see you, you see me. But you've captured it so well. How did you do that? And this is why it was so important for us to have this conversation. Because for the longest time, Botswana is a good news story.
Yep.
And good news, unfortunately, doesn't sell. But what you've been able to do for us is to package the good news that is Botswana and present it to the world to see. So once again, I'm going to say thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. I mean,
your writing process.
Yes.
I've heard very interesting
Yeah.
things about
Yeah.
how you write.
Uh-huh.
You write 1,000 words an hour, which I think is that's a machine at work. Tell us a bit about your writing process. Do you sit there and you plot, or does it just come the way that you watch that woman wringing the chicken's neck? So for somebody sitting in our audience today who does not know Botswana, who has never been to Botswana, and this is probably their first interaction with Botswana, in an interview that you did on the Espresso show, the morning show in South Africa, you said Botswana has things to say to us.
I don't remember saying that, but if you say I said it,
I'm telling you what you said.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
I'm curious to know if you were to break it down to one key message, and that's what Botswana represents for you.
Yes, and many other things.
Yeah.
Many other things. And of course, I would always say, people sometimes accuse me of looking at the world with very rosy spectacles. Well, okay, I do to an extent, because I don't think there's any point in being pessimistic about the world. What's the point in worrying and being pessimistic about the world? It's not going to solve any problems. So I believe in being positive about the world. So, I would always say, I'd be first to say, yeah, sure, okay, I'm presenting a positive message about Botswana, but Botswana, like anywhere else, has its problems.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that I don't see those, and of course I see. But I'd say, on balance, the positive is way above any minor negative things. So that's the view that I'd take. And I remember having a conversation with Motswana, with this chap, who was, I'll tell you who he was. He was it was at the children's home, the SAS children's home. I'd gone out to see them. And the figure was his job was the father figure. It was an official job. It's a wonderful job, father figure. Imagine an advertisement in a paper, wanted, father figure. And, but he was a father figure for the community, the SAS community. A very fine man who'd been a social worker in his professional career, and now it was a father figure as a retirement job. And I was being interviewed by the BBC. The BBC had their cameras there, and they were photographing me visiting the place.
I could talk to you all afternoon, but I'm not going to be so selfish. Before I invite questions from the audience, could you tell us about the new book in the series? What escapades are Precious and her... Is Mr. Matekoni still there?
He's there, yes, yeah, no, they're
He's
still
so
married.
unassuming, so sometimes you just think he's going to disappear.
Yes, no. Precious and Grace and Miss J.O.B. Matekoni, and the two apprentices, they're still there. Somebody said to me the other day, because this is volume 20, these books have been going for over 20 years. Somebody said to me, look, how long does it take to do a mechanical apprenticeship in Botswana? And I said, well, maybe 25 volumes or whatever. But they're still there. The latest book is called To the Land of Long Lost Friends. And very simply, it's an old friend of Precious Ramotswe's comes to her and says her daughter has become cold towards her. And there's something going on in her daughter's life. And so Mma Ramotswe is asked to try and find out what that is. And she does that. So that's it. And then there's a bit of romance for Charlie, who's one of the apprentices. He's got quite a glamorous girlfriend. And I think in volume 21, if I can tell you in confidence, this is strictly speaking between ourselves and the cameras and the journalists, is that I think we could have Charlie being married off in the next one. He deserves. He's grown up.
He needs to settle down.
He needs to settle down, and his heart's in the right place. He's a bit fashionable, but his heart's in the right place.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? Any comments? We've got a very quiet audience, but thank you for engaging with us. Anybody want to say anything to Alexander McCall Smith. Because I can carry on with the conversation, but I won't.
Ask a question.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Justice Sichele. I'm probably the only person who hasn't read any of your books, I'm sorry. But I've promised to get a couple for my daughter to read for me, because I'm not a very good reader. What I want to ask you is, because everything you're saying is very, very positive. Yeah? I mean, having come from Scotland, I assume that's where you come from, and been to Africa, did you have any perceived views about Africa, and how did those change when you got there? Because everything about what you're saying is positive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in your writing, do you think you are influenced by any unconscious bias?
Yes. Yes. That's very interesting. It's a very complex question, that. You see, because one of the things that you could say to any writer is that the writer is obviously going to put himself or herself into the books, is actually going to use preconceptions and, as you say, bias into the books. And I think you've got to be conscious of that as a writer. I think, in my particular case, I am a writer who probably chooses to take a positive approach. I'm not a writer who spends a lot of time writing about the pain of the world. Now, there are many writers who do that, and they do that very well. In none of my books, wherever they're set, and I'm talking also about my Scottish books or whatever, I am at the other end of the spectrum. So, conscious bias, no, I hope there's no conscious bias. There is, I suppose, a deliberate, self-imposed declining to deal with issues which are very distressing or difficult. And that's because of the sort of book that I'm writing. So you can say, yes, there is that bias there. But that actually is because of personal preference for the sort of book that I like to write. So if you look at my Scottish books, you'd see exactly the same thing there. Many Scottish writers concentrate on the difficulties of contemporary Scotland, and would do that, very, very well. They're more social realists. I'm not really a social realist writer, but that just happens to be the way I am, and I think I can defend that philosophically. I really think I can. I think people say to me sometimes, "You're a utopian writer." And I say, okay. But I mean, your point, I take your point, and I see that. And so, but you can't, as a writer, you can't be all things. You can't be, you make your choice. And I've made my choice. I think I can defend it. But I certainly understand the issue that you would raise there.
He also asked about any preconceived notions you had about
No, I think no, I don't. I think so. I mean, I think I'm open to various influences.
Hello. I noticed that with the movie, there were sort of different things, or some funny stuff, or different things from the books. I've read all the books, by the way, and the movie there were some things that were added. For example, the hairdresser,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
wasn't in there.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? I know that the movie was a different organization,
Yeah.
and and I noticed that you did go to Botswana. You were on the set. How did you feel about all those things that were added that did not appear in the book?
Yeah. That's a very interesting question. The movie, I think, was quite difficult to make. I think Anthony Minghella did a wonderful job doing it. He's a very sympathetic film director, and I thought that he did an extraordinarily good job of it. Sorry, what particular thing that you... Sorry, I was slightly sidetracked. The addition, yes, sorry, yes, the addition. When I first read that in the script, because they showed me the scripts, there were a couple of things in the scripts that I didn't like, and I raised them with Anthony and the other person involved in that. And they had put in a cross-dresser into the story, and this chap was wearing women's clothing, and I said, I didn't think culturally that really quite fitted with me. And they looked at me, and I said, really, I don't think that quite works, because that would not be, at that stage, I don't know what the situation is now, but it wouldn't have been a very culturally appropriate or easy thing. And so they changed him into the hairdresser, played by that really very good actor, South African actor, Dube, I think, I forget what his... Anyway, he was...
Desmond.
Sorry, what was he? Desmond Dube, yes. And I thought he was a very good character. And I think it worked. It might not have worked, but I think it worked really well, because he was a good foil for Mama Kutsi. So I think that worked. And then apart from that, they stuck pretty closely to the books. I was pleased that they did that, and I think Anthony Minghella respected the ethos of the books. Often filmmakers completely deviate from the what's in the books. I have an American writer friend, who wrote a book set in Berlin, and they sold the film rights. And he saw the script, and it opens with a scene on the beach in Berlin, and he said, Berlin's in the middle. And, the sea is hundreds of miles away. And the director, the scriptwriter say, oh, whatever. So they can get things completely wrong.
Can we come to this side of the room after that question? Yeah.
So thanks very much for your interventions this morning. I just wanted to ask a question with regards to, we live in an age where the role of the media, the role of writers, the role of storytellers is very important. So I guess perhaps this is an open question, what is your advice to writers at this current stage, journalists, people involved in the media, specifically to Botswana, but also to the continent in general?
As advice as to how... Storytelling. Yeah. How to... well, I suppose, the advice that I always give to people who want to write in whatever bit of the media they wish to do is to persist. I think that it's very, very difficult to get published. And sometimes people who are starting a career in writing find it extremely difficult. Just about every writer I know has had a lot of rejection letters. Occasionally you meet somebody who doesn't have a rejection letter, but everybody's gone through a process of rejection. I had rejection letters. And so I think persistence, And I think the other thing is to write, that people should continue to write from the heart. And they must write what they want to write rather than look at the market too much and see what the literary marketplace is doing. Because if you do that, it won't be authentic and it won't have the passion that it must have to come from the heart. So that's one of the things that I feel. Interestingly enough, things have changed quite dramatically with the possibilities of self-publication now, because there's been a democratization of the publishing world. You can publish a book and then sell it on Amazon. You can do it yourself. So that actually has made an awful lot of people who felt they couldn't get into print, they can get into print. Now it's another matter. You can do that, but who's going to buy it is the next question. And you would hope that your aunties and others will all buy several copies. But there is so there's been a democratization of publishing, but difficulties in commercial publishing still obviously are quite acute. I think it's really interesting to see there's lots of interesting literature being produced in African countries as elsewhere, and I think that's a very interesting thing now, that the old stranglehold that existed in publishing, where you had certain publishing centres controlled everything, that's been broken, and that's been so it's many new voices can come into that space, which is very positive.
We have a question over here. I'm going to take two more questions. Mm-hmm. There's one at the back, just so that we can wrap up the conversation. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. McCall Smith, my name is Jasmine Montgomery. I'm CEO of an advertising agency called 7 Brands, and we do a lot of destination branding.
Oh, yes.
Let me just start by saying, if I may, that my father and I have both been reading your books for at least 30 years, which shows my age and certainly his, and it's a great honour to meet you. But sitting here listening to you, and you talk so eloquently about Botswana, and it's my job to market countries, nations, and some other African nations, which I wouldn't dream of mentioning here because they pale in comparison to Botswana, of course. But one of our jobs is to market, African destinations as holiday places.
Yes.
To British, American, Western audiences. And I'm curious to know what you think the barriers are to Africa in the West and how those can be overcome. And to ask you, if you were doing an advertising campaign for Botswana, how you would sell it to the British market.
Well, that's a very interesting question and a very complex question. I'm in the presence of lots of professionals who could answer that much better than I could. I thought that little film that we saw did a very good job of that. That was quite an interesting combination of not doing too many of the obvious touristy things. I mean, that is something which, when I watched that, I actually asked myself, if I didn't know Botswana and I watched that, would I want to go there? Answer, yes, because it's a very warm film that came across. If I were a businessman, would I want to go and invest in that country? Answer, yes. So I think you're doing something right with that, with your particular approach. I suppose the usual barriers, issues arise. I suppose people are concerned. People are always concerned about safety. That's something. Fortunately, in many of the countries that you'd be marketing in Africa, the safety issue is not really a serious issue. I suppose there are one or two places on the continent where people would be advised to be careful, but generally speaking, I suppose what one might stress is the getting away to something authentic and something real in a world which is rather tired and rather used elsewhere. And I think people are looking for the real experience. I mean, obviously that drives the tourist industry in many respects, but they're wanting to get away from the obvious places. So you don't, they don't want to go in this country. They don't want to go to Spain or what. I mean, there's no reason why you shouldn't go to Spain. But nonetheless, I think that's something. And I think portraying African countries as places of human warmth is something that I play very strongly. That's what draws people reading the #1 ladies detective agency to go to Botswana. They want to encounter those. It's the human qualities that they like. And I must say, I can report back very, very positively. And when I do my tours in the United States, for example, I meet lots and lots of people who say, I read your books, and we went off to Botswana, and I said, well, how was it? And they say, they were so kind to me. That is a bit of feedback for your question. People said they love it when people are kind to them. And that came time and time again. Visitors would say that to me. But I'm sure that you get it when you have your assessment forms that visitors fill in. They probably say that. But it's really important. And I think it's in a world which is very very unhappy in many respects, and very hostile and very, very conflicted. That's something that one would stress.
Okay.
Last question.
Okay. My name is Sabaha. When you wrote the books, I know you imagined this traditional belt Botswana woman, and I guess all the other characters were Botswana. So when you found out the movie was made and most of the cast was from America, did you not feel that your book was being altered in a way?
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I must say, I said to them when they were talking about it, I mean, I spoke to them for ages before they got to the stage of making the movie. I said, I do hope that you'll be able to use as many local actors as possible, local people involved in it. I didn't have any say in the casting. People thought that I did. And I was saying earlier on that in the year or two before they made the film, whenever I was on tour elsewhere, when I checked into the hotel, they'd say, oh yes, there's a lady waiting to have a word with you. People have heard that you're coming. And sure enough, there would be an actress, traditionally built actress, say, me, I'm Mma Ramotswe. And they'd give me their portfolio. You see this photograph, I've been in that. And I had to say, well, this is fine, but it's nothing to do with me. I did say. Oh, you would have done it jolly well. I'm sure very, very well. I said to the director once, I was friendly with Tom and Sheila Clough. He was the principal of the university then, and Sheila was Minister of Health.
I can actually answer that question because I wrote an email to Alexander McCall Smith saying, I'm Mma Ramotswe. And his response was, they're looking for a Hollywood star to sell the movie. So a lot of us were disappointed, trust me.
They tried, I mean, to be fair to them, they tried to get as much local involvement as possible. I think that Anthony Minghella really was very sensitive to these things. He was a very good man. He died on the day of the premiere here in London of the film. It was a terrible... I got off the plane at London Airport, came down from Edinburgh, and there was the producer had sent me an email. My phone went and said, Anthony's dead, but the family wanted it to go ahead. But you can imagine what that was like. It was a bittersweet occasion, the premiere, and people were watching this. I was in tears when I watched that. When I watched that film for the first time, I just cried with emotion because I thought that some of it was so beautiful. The beginning when you see that, and I was just, and it was a very emotional occasion. But they did it well. One thing I can say is that we are hoping that we will get a musical going, and I've got the most fantastic composer, two composers, and they are really very good. And they have written seriously good music. One is a South African musician called Bongi, who is working. He works on The Lion King in New York, and the other is a Scottish composer friend of mine who was a big rock star. He was a member of a big rock band called OMD, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, which was very big, and he's got lots of gold discs and whatnot. And he said to me, "Could I write some music about the Number One Ladies?" And I said, "Try." And he's done, and together they're doing really great music. And we've had difficulty getting the control of the rights back, because the rights were controlled, the stage rights were controlled 50% by me and 50% by Mr. Harvey Weinstein. Mr. Harvey Weinstein is otherwise engaged. He has a little of what they would call local difficulties at the moment. But we've got, they sold all the Weinstein rights to another company, and it's inch by inch we're hoping to get, because that would be fabulous. There, once we get, if we manage to get it a bit further down the road, then I very much hope we will have full Botswana involvement in that. And I think, we'll do our best.
Yep.
We'll do our best.
I think we are all anxiously waiting for that day.
Well, let's hope. Let's cross fingers. Or stand, in Botswana, you stand on your toe, don't you, if you want to make sure that something happens.
I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
A round of applause, please, for
Thank you.
Alexander
Thank you very
McCall
much
Smith.
indeed. Thank you.
The conversation can continue outside. He's going to be with us for just a bit longer. I know Jan is checking her watch furiously, but we do have a bit of time. I really wanted to wrap up this session by reading something written by the New York Times, which says, McCall Smith's generous writing and dry humor, his gentleness and humility, and his ability to evoke a place and a set of characters without caricature and condescension have endeared his books to readers. And that's exactly why we had to have this conversation, because the way he has written so authentically about Botswana, positioning Botswana to the rest of the world, we really needed to acknowledge the tremendous work that he's done over the 21 years. Thank you once again.
Another round of applause. Where I come from, it's common to ask, are we certain, 110% sure there isn't a burning question in the room that you need to ask with everybody present? Oh, I had hoped it wouldn't happen, but it has happened.
Very short to the point. Hello. Red Bush tea. Why Red Bush tea? But I'm very, very happy that you chose Red Bush tea, because I grew up on it. When I first came to England in '93, it was nowhere to be found. Then it made its way into some health food shops. But lo and behold, Maramutswe resurfaced, and there's Red Bush tea everywhere, even in Waitrose.
Thank you. I like Red Bush tea myself, and it was just an accident. So much about these books is just historical accident. It happened to happen, and I had suddenly Mma Motswe started drinking Red Bush tea. I wrote about Red Bush tea. We had after a few years, a couple of years after the publication of the books, when they took off, I had a letter from the Red Bush Tea Company. Which, as you know, most of it's produced in the Cederberg Mountains down in the Cape. And there was one big company which produced most of it then, called the Red Bush Tea Company, and they wrote and they said, "Thank you very much indeed. Since since these books have been published, sales of Red Bush tea throughout the world have gone up 7 times, and so that was good. That was great, and I feel quite good about that. No, I'm not. No. I did actually. Well, that's a good idea. But I had there was an American tea company that produced. They said we want to do some specialty teas, and so they did 3 sorts of 2 sorts of Red Bush tea and 1 ordinary straightforward tea, and they did a lovely canister of tea, Mama Kutsi's 97% tea, which of course says, and then Mma Ramotswe Red Bush tea, and then Mr. J.L.B. Matakoni Garage tea, and they sold those for a while, but you can still get Red Bush tea endorsed by Mma Ramotswe. There's a company called the Rare Tea Company in this country that does a Red Bush tea which refers to Botswana and to Mma Ramotswe. But no, it changed the fortunes of Red Bush tea, and now people realize how good it is for you.
Was that a really, really good question? Some forgiven? Fantastic. Okay, so Honorable, do pardon us. You did say that you're famished and you're looking forward to eating. I'm sure all of us are by now. Hence, I will not take up any much of your time, but only to say this about my good friend Joseph. So he's got a television show in Poland. He speaks Polish. Can't hear anything. He has written cookbooks. And one of his favorite things is to teach children how to cook. So he comes out to, I think as part of his corporate social investment or responsibility, is coming back where he has been trained, which is the UK, and hosts these cooking lessons with children, because he's big on ensuring that school-going children eat nutritious meals, which I think is absolutely fantastic. But having said that, one of the things that I think I really also ought to say is that as a brand himself, he's been taken on by other really big brands to associate with their products, so that when he's busy cooking on television, almost everything that we're seeing has got his name attached to it. I think it's a story that we continue to tell about Botswana making waves, not just in Botswana, but across the world. Hence, I am super proud to say the gentleman that is about to get on this stage, I've had the pleasure of eating his food. That was such a long time ago, so I'm really, really excited about having Joe come and tell us exactly what it is that we're going to be having. I hope hona le nama.
Dumela. Legai. Okay, my name is Joseph Pilotona Seeletso. I was born and bred up in Botswana. Ke Motswana wa Sekei. Megile kgwelwa gape. Oh, I have to go back to English. I'm sorry, I might be getting a little bit confused because on a daily basis I use Polish. I'm based in Poland, in Warsaw. Yes, I'm a chef. I was trained in this city. Therefore, I always get a little bit emotional when I'm in the city. But okay, I'm not going to talk a lot about myself because I know that most of us here, we are hungry. We like to taste. Yeah? Okay. I'm just going to go through the menu just to explain what are we going to be eating. Yes, we'll be kick-starting with the cappuccino of lentils. The cappuccino of lentils will be served with the savory donuts. We call them magwinya, okay? Magwinya or manyunyumani. Yeah. And yeah, we've got mopane worms. Mopane worms like our, let me say, our prawns, but in addition to that, I mean, in addition to that, I mean, this is the future because we all know that in 50 years we'll be all eating ants. This is it. And mopane worms is a source of proteins, and yes, we'll be having mopane worms burgers, and we'll be having as well a popular vegetarian dish, which is mainly corn and beans, okay, cooked together. Okay, it's called dikhobe. Okay, good. And we'll be having sorghum porridge. Sorghum porridge will be a little bit fermented, and because nowadays all of the Michelin star chefs are more into fermenting, and yes, in Botswana as well, we've been fermenting for ages and ages. If I may try to add a bit to that, I remember I was reading an article that was in Poland, I think about 8 years ago, about Basarwa, okay, known as Bushmen. It was an article that they've been eating truffles. Yes, we've got truffles in Motswana. We call them mahupu. And we've been eating truffles for 1,000 years. So this is why I'm always saying, yes, I think most of us, we come from Botswana. This is where we come from. We come from Botswana. And you might have heard that watermelon as well comes from Botswana, yeah? This is it, okay. But anyway, we'll be having siswa, our beef. We know that we've got the best beef, on earth. This is it. And the reason being, our beef is tasty. Not only tasty, it's natural. Not only natural, but you can feel our passion as well. That we are farmers as well. Okay, the beef is cooked for about 3 to 4 hours, and then after that we are just pounding it with a wooden spoon. We're just adding salt to it, and that's it. And through the beef, you can feel the fifth taste that we always call it umami. You know, the fifth taste, and this is it. Okay, basically, if I was to say something about dijo tsa Setswana, our food are natural, honest flavors. A bit rustic. Not only that, but what I can say as well, I think you'll be able to feel the spirit of Mara Motswe through our food today. Okay? And let me go back to the kitchen. You know, for me, being a chef, you know, getting a stage, you know, it's a little bit sometimes tricky. But anyway, I'm happy to share the stage again with McCall Smith. Yeah, I think we've met about 4 years ago in Stockholm. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. And later I'll be still coming if you'd like to ask me questions about Botswana, about Poland, because yes, I speak Polish. Yes, when I'm here, I even think 1997, just around the corner, Grosvenor Square, Marriott Hotel. I remember cooking a Caesar salad for Michael Jackson in the city. Yes, I've cooked in the US as well, doing some demo, promoting Botswana food. I've cooked for Bill Gates and Melinda. I've cooked for King Gustav and Queen Sylvia, and King Gustav, he loves his beef. Okay, I'm gonna just go back to the kitchen, okay, and then we'll meet over there. Okay, thank you very much, India. Thank you.
We did say conversations right at the beginning. I know the idea was to have conversations about the books, but also, yeah, we can't divorce ourselves from the food. I'm now literally salivating from everything that he's been saying. And for those that are probably a bit shy about trying out stuff, just think of it as exotic meals that you can then chat to your friends about. So I really would like to encourage all of you to try everything. At this point, I've been asked that I remind all of you that should you want to get a book, have it signed, then make sure that you use the networking session as an opportunity for you to be able to do that. If there's any other question that you probably would have loved to ask, perhaps not necessarily just about the books, but rather about Botswana, please engage with everybody from BITC, but also all Botswana that are here, I'm sure would be able to respond to any question about Botswana. So please make sure that you take advantage and use them. At this point, I would like to call the gentleman that for this afternoon I'm going to call my boss, and say thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to be able to engage. When the boss doesn't sign off, that PO, it doesn't happen. So we would like to say thank you very much. At this point, can we kindly give the BITC Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Kelusitse Ulibile, a chance to have his say. Akwesitshwe.
Well, thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies. That is exactly the way you tell a country's story. You can do it through fiction, as we've just received. You can do it through the food. You can do it through the culture, the people, and that was the exact purpose of having this function here today. But I don't think I can take that long, especially when the menu has been so eloquently explained. So I'm sure everybody is now looking behind the board to say, let us get the final experience. But be that as it may, let me recognize the presence of the Honorable Minister, Investment, Trade and Industry, Mebogolo Joy Kenewendo, Your Excellency High Commissioner of Botswana to the United Kingdom, Reverend Dr. John Seakosin, our esteemed guest, Mr. Alexander McCall Smith, and your publicist, Ms. Jan Rutherford, our Botswana brand ambassador and world-renowned chef, Mr. Joseph Seelezo, who's just addressed us, members of the media here present, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. The Botswana Investment and Trade Center, which I happen to lead, has a mammoth task of profiling and promoting Botswana globally to attract investment, drive the creation of an export-led economy, as well as ensure that the world knows about our beautiful country through marketing. Botswana is often hailed as a beacon of good governance on the African continent, known for its peace, democracy, stability, and we have been identified many times as one of Africa's best-kept secrets. This is a descriptor which we are very anxious to get rid of, and it's necessary because Botswana has a plethora of opportunities to sell, both for investment purposes as well as a destination to visit and live in. This afternoon, we came to pay homage to one of Botswana's greatest ambassadors, Mr. Alexander McCall Smith, who has profiled Botswana extensively through his series of Ramotswe. The #1 Ladies Detective series has created so much awareness about Botswana, and most people around the world know of Botswana through this book series. And true to this, yesterday we were just strolling along Oxford Street. Anybody who randomly stop and say, do you know anything about Botswana? The first word they will scream out of their mouth is, oh, the #1 Ladies Detective. That's how we've gotten to be known in this part of the world. I therefore, on behalf of Botswana Investment and Trade Center, wish to thank you, Mr. McCall Smith, for putting Botswana on the world map through your writing. The awareness creation derived from the series is immense, and as a country, we will forever be indebted to you. I would also like to thank you for agreeing to be with us this afternoon. We have been in conversation with your team for over a year, as it was earlier attested, trying to get to this day, and we are so grateful that it has finally happened. This is indeed humbling, as you were not obliged to do this and be with us this afternoon. But the fact that you came is indeed testimony of the special place that Botswana has in your heart. Let me also take this opportunity to thank once again the Honorable Minister, Investment, Trade and Industry, who actually wasn't supposed to be with us here this afternoon. They have other state engagements going with the Commonwealth and other trade issues they are handling. But when she heard that we would be gathered here. She said there is no way I'm missing that. So thank you so much for coming through. Your Excellency, the High Commissioner of Botswana to the United Kingdom, Dr. Reverend John Seakosing, thank you for hosting us today. Yours and your staff's support has really made this event possible, and for that we'll ever be grateful. I also thank and appreciate the contribution of colleagues from Botswana Tourism Organization, who also reside at the embassy under the guidance of the High Commissioner, who were a key part of the team that put together this event. To Mr. Joseph Seeletso, another key ambassador of Botswana, we recognize and appreciate your efforts to put Botswana on the world map through your culinary journey. It is through Botswana like you in the diaspora that we can effectively promote our Botswana to the rest of the world. Your efforts are visible for all to see. I hope he can hear me from behind. The way he just presented the foods today really excites, as I can now see how we can present our local cuisine as a best cuisine for the world. In fact, just to attest to this, recently we hosted a mission to China, and we happened to be cooking traditional foods like this. Immediately after they got to taste, their chefs were all over us saying, look, from now going forward, we want to be serving these as part of the dishes in the hotel. But we held back because we obviously have to protect our IP and make sure that the country gets something out of it. To all guests, let me say we really appreciate you taking time off your busy schedules to spend the afternoon with us and getting to know a bit more about Botswana, if you didn't know already. As a country, we offer a great tourism experience. In fact, your very own Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, was in Botswana about a fortnight ago. And through his numerous visits that he tends to undertake every year, he has fallen in love with Botswana and made it almost his second home. I urge you to make that first visit to Botswana, for those of you that haven't been, because usually for you to get in touch with whatever you would have heard about a country, the best way to do it is to visit and experience. Recently, two of your countrymen and lady, whom I was inviting to Botswana, were asking me, what exactly can we experience? Then I said, if you come, I'll make you touch a real cheetah. They thought I was joking, but they came through. We took them to Mokolodi, where as part of their conservation efforts, they run a cheetah orphanage. And they got to touch one. And as they were touching the beautiful animal, it gave this wide, beautiful yawn. And they are never stopping to talk about that. To continue with the discussions you may want to have today, please do note that we have a team, a multi-stakeholder team from Botswana. People from the embassy are here, the Botswana Investment and Trade Center. Please, as we network, approach us and try to understand more of what Botswana stands for. We also have a lot of people from Botswana in the room who are residing here in the UK. Please engage them and get to understand a lot more about this beautiful country. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for your attendance and have a very good afternoon.
I'm just going to take that as my welcome to the UK. Thank you very much for being such an amazing audience and for the love, for the dance there. I really, really appreciated that. I just wanted to say perhaps one of the things that we could look into, I don't know if there are any scientists in the room, is all the rain in Cardiff, package, back to Botswana. That would be fantastic. It rains all the time. For those that have never been to Botswana, that happens a lot. As the MC, there will always be somebody with a little something. That happens a lot. I don't know if it's common here. But also the one thing that we also do very well, and I'm saying this because we want to give you the Botswana experience, is that when you go to somebody's home or when you are a visitor, the expectation is that you must have something that you take back. You know, a little token or a gift to remind yourself of where you've been. And hence, I would like to invite the Honorable Minister to come up to the podium, and of course our guest of honor, the Honorable Minister, just so that we declare, will present a token of appreciation to our guest. I'm just going to say, I'm hoping the gift will also be a reminder for him to write more, bring more people to Botswana. This was done in Botswana, just in case you were thinking it's from the UK. There's a company called Inalebi. It's actually a company owned by two ladies, a young lady, I believe, I think, in partnership with their mother. They do run the company. They're able to do all kinds of amazing stuff on coasters. Anything that you can think of, they can engrave it on anything. So, yeah.
And this is a reciprocation. This is the latest book which is signed for you, to the land of long lost friends. Thank you very much.
Okay, then. I just have one request, which can happen afterwards while we're eating. Can I also get my book autographed, handed, picture? Great. Yes, picture. There's a gentleman there that's been taking pictures. I feel Charles. His name is Charles Talefang. Yes, I make mention of him because you do need to look him up. He's yet another brand coming out of Botswana. He also has a book, a photography book, on the country. And he's traveled quite extensively and written quite a lot about Botswana. I had to, Charles. I had to. Yeah. So he's wearing a leteisi. The jacket that he's wearing is made from the same material that Mebami Moremung is wearing, the same that I'm wearing, the same that Memma Sakhosing is wearing. The one thing that we didn't make mention of is that, yes, is the food, is the people, is the culture, but it's also in the dress that we present who we are. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an honor. My name is Tsepo Hepima Panyani, and at this point, lunch is served. Well, late lunch, but still lunch is served.